Welcome back to Hemp Tribe Media. This is Vanessa Adams. And right now, I have on the line a gentleman by the name of Gary, can you please say your last name? Gary Kaczmarek. Is that right?
Gary Kaczmarek.
Oh, there we go. Gary is an ex-police officer in New Orleans, police department in Louisiana, born and raised in Louisiana. He's also with an organization, Common Sense NOLA. Jerry, let's get right to it and give your spill to the people on what you've been through and what brought you to helping and supporting the cannabis industry, an advocacy group within your state.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I was born and raised in New Orleans itself, purebred, joined a police department June 6, D-Day, 1994. Went ahead, was involved in multiple fights, car accidents, which subsequently ended my career. I had to get my whole left shoulder reconstructed. My scapula had to be realigned. My tendon had to be reattached to the bicep. My rotator cuff was completely torn. Went to my doctor that I would normally see on a regular basis, who was my orthopedist. I started taking opioids, i.e. pain pills. Before you know it, I went ahead and got hooked. Katrina hit. And by the grace of God, August of 2007, went ahead and relocated to Colorado Springs, not knowing what the future was definitely going to have in front. Turned around after moving there, my opioid addiction got even worse because I went from a lower milligram of like maybe 10 milligrams of Taliesin all the way up to 20 milligrams of OxyContin twice a day. And I was
Are you kidding me?
No.
Holy moly. That's a lot of painkillers.
And I was taking 4 or 5 Percocets in between. One Oxy in the morning, one at night, and then Percocets throughout the day. And,
oh, my God.
And I went ahead and I was also getting I could only get 3 cortisone injections in my shoulder per year. And I eventually went to my doctor and I asked him, I said, Doc, what else, is there anything more you can do? And he says, your last option is surgery. I didn't really want to go under the knife. The same shoulder already had 8 bone spurs removed. So I was like, you know what? Went ahead, decided to do the surgery. Opioid addiction just got worse and worse. Next thing you know, turned around. It was a successful surgery. A surgery that was supposed to last for an hour and a half ended up being a 4-hour surgery because they had no idea how bad it was. And so let's now fast forward probably about a year to 15 months post-surgery. Went in, spoke to the doctor. The doctor even told me, he said, you know what, you got to get off these pain pills. He said, this is it. He says, you've gone through physical therapy, everything else. My shoulder's about 70% now, and it'll never be 100%. But luckily, you know what, my doctor, if you don't mind me saying his name, Daniel Henley, who's a retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force in Colorado Springs, he was the one who told me. He said, you know what, I'm going to start weaning you off, and me being in a state, thank God, that legalized cannabis in 2012 with Amendment 64, which I voted on, he told me, he says, I don't care what you do. He said, but I'm weaning you off because your liver enzymes are actually elevated, and it's something, you just got to get off. That's it, bottom line. Brought up cannabis, and that's when he said, I don't care what you have to do. You're getting off. So I actually went to a place called Maggie's Farm, which is 5 miles southwest of Colorado Springs, but it's actually still incorporated. It's in Manitou Springs, but it's incorporated with El Paso County, which is part of Colorado Springs. Anyhow, I went in there, spoke to a bud tender. I told him what was going on, and the guy gave me about I purchased 4 or 5 different strands, because I'm familiar now with, sativa, hybrid, indica, and before you know it, I went ahead and I was able to wean myself off, and now I'm probably, about 9 months.
So tell me something.
Clean.
What strain ended up working best for you?
Blue Dream.
Are you kidding me? That's the easiest, simplest Blue Dream. But Blue Dream actually makes really good concentrates, though, too.
Oh, absolutely. Blue Dream, and there were 2 others, Sour Diesel and Headband.
Oh, yeah. So do me a favor, because there's a lot of people that we have that are coming on and listening to the show that are baby boomers and finding the best way to start converting over, because just like you, we all have to do the work. We all have to go in. We have to find what works for us. We have to ask the questions. We have to just kind of swallow our pride and go in there. What is it that you found that worked for you best for pain management to get started to help you heal?
You know what it was? I went ahead, and this was really, and this is why I'm so pro-cannabis, is because I got into a routine. I went through the god-awful withdrawals, but you know what? Cannabis helped me out tremendously. And what I would do, and I also got, and this is what really helped me out also, and this is why I think cannabis is so good for mind, body, and soul. In the afternoon, I'd smoke a little sativa to uplift me, to help me with the pain. And now I'm actually in a regiment. Since I moved back to New Orleans from Colorado Springs, I walk between 6 to 12 miles a day. I got into an exercise routine, which was fantastic. But say it's sativa in the afternoon, maybe like a light salad and a light dinner, and then evening time for rest was the indica. It was an anesthesia. Anesthesia is the name of it that I used.
Okay.
So, I mean, if anything, it was something I went ahead and it's like anything else. I think the best thing you can do, and that's why sativa is so good for uplifting, creativity, and everything else, and it gets you in motion. And that's why now, like I was saying, really an exercise nut. You know, I love to walk. But the one thing I want to go ahead and stress, no matter what, but unfortunately the one thing that the opioids did cost me
was
that? My marriage of 24 years to my wife, and I haven't spoken to my son in over 400 days.
I'm so sorry about that.
No, thank you, my dear. I mean, if anything, it just got to the point where, you know, these opioids are destructive on families, communities. I mean, and then unfortunately today you've got people dying in alleyways when there is a solution to take care of it. And that's the thing that really breaks my heart more than anything else, because after my wife and I divorced, that's when I went ahead and I relocated back here to New Orleans, met up with Kevin Caldwell of Common Sense NOLA, and then him and I, we actually went to the state legislature on March 16th of this year. There was a criminal justice reform committee that was going on because, unfortunately, as we know, or if you don't know, that we're number one in the privatized prison industry, unfortunately. And we met up, and we've been working together and advocating the legislature to try to go ahead and add chronic pain and PTSD to medical marijuana, the program that they went ahead and they have on law right now. But there's no dispensaries open. That's the only problem. People need medicine. This is medicine, you know.
It's really a shame just the level of decompartmentalization that's in the South, that when I was out there last year in May launching for a hemp company, that what you see is poverty, but you also see history. What you see out there are people that are struggling, but you also see love and connection. And with what you all have to go through with Katrina and then this last flood that just happened, and you guys didn't get the opportunity within the state for people to get money back to save their homes. You know, cannabis could be such a huge asset in switching the environment around, and there should be options out there even for detail. Police reform, for them to really understand the power of cannabis, because we all know there's a lot of officers out there that when they put the uniform on and they go to work, they have to hate it. But deep down, if something would have happened to their family members, their children, people that they love, they would drive it out of state. They would drive somebody out of state in order to get the treatment that they need. So it's a catch-22. It's just not good.
Oh, Vanessa, I'm with you all the way, and you know what? You're absolutely right, and you hit the nail on the head. God forbid, if it was anybody else's family, you can bank on it, that they would be in the car, relocating, doing whatever they needed to do in order to go ahead and get that medicine for their child, their loved one, their mother or father who may be elderly, a family member or a friend who's LGBTQ, for HIV/AIDS. I mean, you name it. You can just go down the list and name, like you just brought up. I mean, to me, it's ludicrous, and I really believe also is that cannabis could actually turn around and reinvent New Orleans. And not only New Orleans, but, the agricultural aspect of it throughout the whole state of Louisiana. I really believe the whole state, could be reborn completely in such a positive way that it would really become a new South. I really believe that. I really and truly believe that.
So what brought you to, aside from your journey, when you went to Colorado Springs, how long were you there for before you came back to NOLA?
I was actually in Colorado Springs August 2007 and actually got officially back in NOLA right after January of this year. So I was there for over 9 years.
What brought you back?
Family, and I think what it was, too, is that everything that was going on, I think it was a good idea at the time, if you know what I'm talking about. I think a lot of times it's good maybe to separate completely, if you can, to another state. I decided to come back home, and I got to be honest with you. There's a big difference. That's another thing, too. Colorado, quality of life, in the top 10. I come back home to NOLA, and I think we're like either last or second or third to last in quality of life. And, I got back here, and I'll be honest with you, I was reeling. And then the other thing, too, is that when I started walking around for the first couple of weeks, and like you brought up with Katrina, this city was not healed at all. And, I started reading a lot, which I do all the time because I'm alone and I'm by myself, but I read all the time. But my point is this, is that first thing they should have done after Katrina was rebuilt all the schools. That's my opinion. The school system here is substandard, the salaries, and that's another thing, too, that people need to realize, is that post-Katrina, pre-Katrina, if you were poor in the city, you could slug it out and make it. Post-Katrina, rents now are like $1,500, $1,600 a month. Who can afford that? And especially, when you're talking about minimum wage at $7.25 an hour, give me a break. So, and then the other thing too is that
doesn't pay for anything. $7.25 is not brought to the standard of living in almost any state.
Exactly.
How do people expect to feed themselves? Get gasoline and go to work and pay for the place that they live. And then we've got all these other things where people are rental houses, Airbnb, cost of living is going up. People are starting to realize they can make more money, and they're booting people out, and there's no place for people to go.
I know. Well, and hey, here's another thing also that will repulse you like it repulses me. Why do 25% of the people in the city of New Orleans live in poverty? 25%. We're not saying 8%, 25%. That's a lot.
How many people? What does the statistic say? How many people live in Louisiana?
I think it's around maybe like 1.8 million, something like that. I'm really not too sure, but I know post Katrina it's around I think 400,000 now in the city. Compared to pre-Katrina, it was right at around, and I'm talking about the metro area too.
So
About
it's safe to say even with New Orleans, there's a good 20% in poverty there. They can't meet the average cost of living. I've seen it. I love the people that there. I mean, all of them, whether they had money or not, it's just the South there's just so much love there with people. If you're real, they're real right back at you.
Oh, absolutely. But you know what it is, and here's the sad thing, but unfortunately I really believe, and this is another thing, a whole other topic, but another thing that actually went ahead and happened is that, a lot of the New Orleanians were seriously left out because what happened is a few years after Katrina, that's when the regentrification process started. So what you're doing is you're pushing people out who are used to, it's a culture. So you're pushing cultures out and everything else, and you're trying to Disneyfy it. And that's exactly what they've done in this city, which is sad. Your people are your culture. You and I know that. But if they have no place to live and they can't afford it, well, what in the hell is going to happen? You're going to lose all that culture.
And then you can't even go out, especially in California. You can't put food and meals together for people that are homeless. It's against the law.
Are you kidding me? I didn't know that.
No, it is. But I was wondering if it's that same way over there in New Orleans for you, too. There's priests getting arrested over here and in other states for putting together soup kitchens for people that were without. Can't feed their family. They got to keep logging people in. Now what they're doing over here, just so you're aware, is they are doing DUI checkpoints. One, it's a violation of your civil rights. But now they don't even have the testings put together for the state of California as we become legal. I don't know how they did it in Colorado, where it's hard for them to what they're doing is they're just swabbing people's mouths, inside their mouth, and documenting their name, their address, everything in their DNA.
That is
and
nuts.
What they're doing,
I didn't know that.
And you and I both know, you being a retired police officer, I think this is going to go a little bit longer. I think you're going to be my last guest this week, and I'm really excited about this. Let's go a little bit longer because I know we could talk for a minute. Because with you being a retired police officer, I think people need to hear it from a professional standpoint from you. So my thing is, when a person goes out, they get in their vehicle. Let's say they smoked weed or had their cannabis the night before. For me, it's at night for me. I can't do it during the day. I'm a tree trunk. There's no way in God's green earth I can go drive under the influence. I know a lot of people do. The statistics are there for what people, and I know you understand this, 60% of the drivers that are out on the road are on something, whether it's cannabis, alcohol, stimulants, illegal drugs. Now, with medical cannabis, it stays in your system for 30 days.
Correct.
But if you take your cannabis the night before, you're fine, you're sober, you're able to get up and drive to go to work. Okay, for other people, they might have a cocktail or they might pop some prescription medicine to help them sleep. Cannabis is definitely different, especially waking up. You don't feel that foggy, groggy, and you feel more together, more present. Now, when they test you while you're driving, or not while you're driving, but you come up to a checkpoint, they're swabbing your mouth. Is this something legal that they're allowed to do? I'm just in general, or is this a violation of your constitutional rights? And how do they have in play right now with the police officers with what is dictated as somebody that is under the influence, right there and there, because it's in your system. Just because it's in your system doesn't mean that you're under the influence of it.
Well, you're right about that, but then here's the other thing, too. But one of the things that I do know, but I'm not an expert in this, but just by reading when I was in Colorado, is that the way the, Colorado police officers were actually doing it was through a test that they would give, and they would check the nanograms in your system at that present moment.
Is that legal?
From what I understand, yes. But there's that gray area also, because one of the things you got to think about is that it's not like a breathalyzer per se when it comes to alcohol, because I still think that they're actually trying to get it down to a science, if I'm making sense.
No, you are making sense. It's just, I mean, this is one of the things I love about this podcast, because if I don't know something, I'm going to ask the questions. And these are questions I've always wanted to know. I've had a lot of friends ask these questions, you know. This is where they built, you know, that new app for driving. They call it Waze. And what I really love about that app, and not to get off, and it's going to be leading into the right direction, what I do like about that app is it's actually a community affair, in the way of somebody could be typing in as a passenger that's got the map going. You could type in police officer, someone on the side of the road. Everybody's watching out for each other, and this is what we really need to implement, and it's really interesting that's coming up on the new map app. I'll send you a link over to it. I mean, it's actually phenomenal, but it kind of safeguards people, because if they know that there's a police officer on the side of the road, the people are going to be more bound to police their behavior. And if you see these red dots as you're going on the map, as you can see when you're going down the road, and you're going to – have you seen this yet?
No, I haven't, but I'm interested.
I'm going to send you the link, because you're gonna love it, because people are putting in road hazards. People put in if there's a police officer on the side of the road with their gun going. You know, a lot of people don't know, and maybe I want to verify this with you. If you did pull anybody over, did any citizen ever have the right to say, do you have the paperwork? Is your gun recalibrated?
Question, darling. It really is. No, I never have.
Okay, what happens out here a lot, maybe it's because it's highly populated, but there's like simple things where people, you know, we're in an age of Uber and Lyft and all of these, you know, come and pick me up, and taxi cabs are losing money, and these businesses, you know, they can't feed their families. You know, we've got these big corporations buying an organic store. You know, Amazon just bought Whole Foods. We're migrating over to an era where we're all going to be behind a computer like Joe the Volcano. Now, when we go out, you know, what's going to be available is your food and entertainment and things that you want to do, and the labor jobs. But when somebody goes out of their house and they're driving to work, they're not under the influence. I mean, and actually cannabis, especially sativa, helps you focus more. But it's interesting, you can be on the pharmaceuticals, but you can't be on the cannabis, more specifically like, you know, sativa, for people that don't understand it. Sativa's like the Dayquil, and indica is like the NyQuil. But
Correct.
How can they actually measure with what you have in your system? Because there's been cannabis users for 20 to 50 years. They've never gotten any trouble. They have a clean record, but they drive down the road and they get popped because they got stoned earlier, or they use their cannabis products. But they are completely capable. They completely pass their test. There was another thing I was watching where they're starting to test these officers, where they have like this new drug training. And if they pass the breathalyzer for alcohol, then automatically they ask if they do the hardcore drugs, and they said, no, you could check my car. Then all of a sudden they go right to, you do marijuana. There was a write-up with the sheriff. He was getting like the most arrests. He was doing the best. But when people fought it, and it took people like 6 months to fight, I don't even smoke cannabis. Why did you do this to me? And the uproar of their life and what they had to go through just to get their name clean, and they've never even touched it before.
You know what? I did see something on that. It was actually a video on Facebook. I know exactly what you're talking about. And, you know, being a former cop, that really shocked me. I mean, if anything, how can you just turn around and look at somebody and say, boom, you know, oh, you're stoned. Oh, I think you're using. You know, it's not assumption when it comes to police work. I mean, you've got to go ahead and do your job on facts, evidence, you know, stuff like that. You just don't pull stuff out of the sky, you know. And believe me, the thing that really gets me also is that the state of affairs with policing today, and that's another thing that we can lead into, is that with post-Katrina, and I've heard this from some policemen, is that you've actually gotten policemen who have come down here from all parts of the country. It would be kind of like me from New Orleans going up to L.A. I'm not from L.A. I don't know anything about it.
You wouldn't like it. It's so busy.
But here's the other thing, too, because I'll give you a prime example, is that, and it's no knock on anybody, but from what I understand, and I've heard this from other policemen, is that, people have migrated down to New Orleans from, the north, the west, and they're not familiar with the culture. They're not familiar with the language, the swag. I mean, everything about it. And then not only that, too, but this is why I'm also so big into the cannabis movement, is that in Colorado, education is key. In Louisiana, not so much. And what I'm trying to say is that if you come down here, you got to be more patient. The South is more laid back. And unfortunately, you're dealing with uneducated people a lot of times. And I don't mean that in a mean way, but I mean, if anything, you've got to be able to know the feeling of the streets, the movement, stuff like that. The heartbeat of the city. How's that?
That was one of the things I loved the most when I went out there, was just the genteelness, the culture, just the easy. It is the big easy for a reason. Just being able to relax and be present and be around people and enjoy people's company, and it's the South. That's what the South is about. I went into a smoke shop over there because I was working with a beverage company. And I remember when I went into this smoke shop, I'm thinking, you walk in, you see all the cigarettes on the wall. You see, lighters and wrappers and stuff all over the place of what you need, glass, what do they call them, bubblers, because you can't say what we call them because that's not legal and you can get in trouble for that. But it's like you've got the wrappers, you got your rollers, you got your loose, you got your already pre-rolled tobacco. But I walked in and it was a cigar shop, a Southern cigar shop. I'd never seen one in my life. And I'm like, whoa, this is like stepping back into a movie. It was beautiful. The leather couches, the granite and the marble tables, and just the little fixings that go along with smoking that beautiful Cuban cigar. Never
absolutely.
seen anything like it.
Well, you know what, too, darling? Here's another thing, too. I mean, you just led me into my next thing. Somebody asked me, and you know what I'm talking about because you just related it to that story.
I'm excited.
Is that people would often ask me, how would you describe New Orleans? And it's actually just something that you talked about. And I told them, I said, I would describe New Orleans after growing up there and everything else, it was like a constant one-act play. That's what New Orleans did.
The old Bill plays where you used to be able to pick them up and you knew what the acts were going to be. It's like you're stepping into history. I remember walking by houses that were built in the early 1700s, churches. It's history. So much of our U.S. started in the South. And in the South, there used to be hemp farms. The fabric of America is hemp.
Yes,
Period.
it is.
The fabric of many countries was hemp. It was a commodity.
No, I mean, yeah, absolutely correct. And you know what I think also hemp could do, unfortunately, 2010, what happened here, the BP oil spill. And as we know, I mean, unfortunately, we haven't recovered from that. I mean, you still have fishing villages.
I have a guy who actually figured out how to develop, what they put that bacteria, that stuff on the beach sand in order to eat up the oil because, they're making money on this. They're making money cleaning it up too. But what it does is when people go out there and they get part of the chemicals that they put on the sand in order to clean it up, what it's doing is it's starting like illnesses, respiratory infections. Nobody knows what it's coming from. There's people that have already created the formulas that they could actually have it derived from hemp. And what it does is it keeps eating and eating. It keeps eating that bacteria. And then when there's no bacteria left, what does it do? It eats itself. It's gone. Nobody gets sick. and it's natural. Hemp could do everything.
Oh, I mean, there's no doubt. You're talking about a completely different attitude, culture with agriculture to turn around and to truly turn the state into something golden. It's like I tell people, I said, you know what, New Orleans, when I got back here and I was thinking about it, and you know what I mean, I said, not only New Orleans, but like you brought up with Louisiana and the whole Gulf South, is that New Orleans and Louisiana is seriously sitting on a gold mine. They're sitting on a gold mine. And the Gulf South. There's no doubt in my mind.
Well, hemp can also bring the ecosystem back and start balancing it. This is what people don't understand. Hemp could reestablish the ecosystem, especially, what do you call that? You know, I don't want to say swamp, but what do you call it out there? You know, the different areas.
The wetlands.
There you go.
The wetlands.
Thank you.
The wetlands could actually be, I mean, completely rejuvenated because, I mean, we're losing like a football field an hour of our wetlands. You know, our protection, like you were saying. I mean, hemp, I'm sure, could do so much for the ecosystem and everything else to turn around and to really clean the environment up and everything else, and we'd be golden.
And the governor, how is the new governor with bringing opportunities for at least industrial hemp within your state?
You know what? I mean, if anything, that's something that really hasn't been touched on, to be honest with you. I mean, I know they just recently went ahead. We got the medical marijuana program, you know, was voted on, turned around, passed. Still waiting on the dispensaries. But that should be coming up in talks, you know, pretty soon, hopefully. Because, but as of right now, not that I'm aware of. You know, Kevin would know more about that. Caldwell, that I deal with Common Sense NOLA.
Yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to load this site behind your image, so when people click on through my website, they're going to get redirected. I'm also going to leave your email, because what are you doing in the format of rallying the masses? Are you guys got street teams going on, handing out flyers, getting people involved? How are you bringing people together to start bringing these, getting petitions signed and getting some movement with creating some new forms of public policy that can go in to potentially create law? Or is it something that is so blackballed that nobody wants to do it because the state is in the state of poverty?
Well, you know what? That's a great point, but I can tell you, Kevin, excuse me, Kevin Caldwell is the one who's really the go-between, let's say, when it comes to dealing with a lot of the legislators and stuff like that, because I just recently came on a few months ago, so he's teaching me the ropes when it comes to, you know, state government, the city of New Orleans, and there's also the mayoral race that's coming up. The election itself is October of this year. So,
do you have
believe
any
me, there's
candidates?
a lot of things in the works.
Do you have any candidates that are pro-hemp or pro-cannabis, or are they just not talking about it? I mean, it is a Bible Belt, though, too, but the majority of the people want cannabis. They understand it.
No, I mean, you're right about that. I can tell you this, is that nobody has stepped up to the plate as of yet and said, you know what, something needs to be done. I'm pro-cannabis. We really need to look at this.
I mean, even if they don't do medical, but if they can do industrial hemp, because the industrial hemp, there's so many different strains for fibers, for textiles, for even just reestablishing, you know, the soil and being a soil remediator. There's so many things that hemp could do. And it's one of the most carbon-hungry plants on the planet.
Well, and not only that, but here's the key thing also, Vanessa, as you and I know, and I know we've already touched on it quite a bit with, you know, lack of opportunities, lack of jobs. But you know what? It could actually bring in a lot of good jobs. You know, textile manufacturing. And, you know, here's the other thing, too, I was even thinking about is that, you know, with the BP oil spill.
How about biofuel? Let's
Biofuel,
knock
but not.
Shell out of there and put a big biofuel company in there that is all from industrial hemp.
Oh, I'm with you all the way. And then not only that, but you could also, unfortunately, I mean, fishing villages and areas around the BP oil spill. We're talking about, Point of Lahash. There's a lot of other areas, Barataria Bay, cultures around there, everything else. I mean, this could really inject new life into these areas and start something new, and I'm like you, but nobody's stepped up to the plate as of yet and has brought it up.
So
Why, I don't know.
I'm going to turn the page for a minute, and I'm going to ask you as a police officer, how many people on a basis of a year on a percentage did you have to arrest due to cannabis?
Well, you know what? That's. I was actually thinking about this the other day. The way I was on the police department, I was the renegade type, more or less. And I went ahead and I touched on it in my story. Is that I grew up poor. I grew up in the Upper Ninth Ward, and I was no drug warrior or anything like that. I mean, I smoked cannabis before I was on the force. I joined. And, back then, the strongest thing that you have in a society is a community. And when I was growing up, I looked up to the cops. And, I turned around, joined the force. And to answer your question, I really, and this was probably not good, but I marched to my own drum, more or less. And quota-wise, I wasn't one to get on out there and just scoop everybody up.
Well, you understood. You're one of the rare police officers out there in the force that understood the medicinal power of the cannabis plant. And, and I know you know this, too. It was less likely for you to be busting people even on domestic violence at home when they're stoned versus someone that's drinking or taking other types of illegal drugs that are stimulants that make people angry.
Well, exactly. Exactly. And, that's just it. To me, cannabis should not be the taboo. This should be the taboo. Domestic violence, child abuse, 25% of people in poverty in this city, lack of education, lack of opportunities. If you went ahead and you blanketed cannabis with those topics that I just brought up, then maybe we could go ahead and change things around where we could protect more women, children, just going down the line. And
Absolutely.
That's the thing that gets me. Why would you not want to, protect your most precious diamonds and pearls in the world? Your kids and the mothers.
We should also have an allotment for a lot of accredited medical physicians with their licensing, their backing, their bonding, that they should be able to start working through and start comparing with strains for cannabis to replace pharmaceuticals. Because
absolutely.
It's really not a sense of poverty, because I really think that people need to get out of the demographic or the decompartmentalization of using the word poor, because you could be poor. But you know what? When you're in a poor neighborhood and you're raised poor, it's really about how people come together and help each other out. It's really a wealthy state of mind if you're in the right neighborhood and how people do come together. But the problem is that when you have people in these poverty-stricken neighborhoods, they don't have a choice but to do the extra work. And a lot of them start to deal with drugs to make the extra money they need to bring it home to feed their families. Because that's one thing, the drugs, the alcohol, prostitution. These are things that are always going to be paid for. It don't matter if you're on your last dime. People are going to find a way to pull the money together to pay for it. Now, if you're able to take cannabis off of that, it would really save the state. It would save the people a lot of money, but the people within the state need the numbers. Everybody's a number. And if you don't have anything on your record, your number is actually more valuable because you haven't been in the system. And we're all commodities.
Well,
as soon as
I mean,
we're born, we become a United States commodity. We're traded.
Well, I'll give you a prime example, unfortunately, and this is just, it gets me ill, you know, and Criminal Justice Reform Committee, March 16th, Kevin Caldwell and I are up there. They're in session. We're listening to the testimonies, and they've had multiple cases. But this one case that stood out to me more than anything else, and this is what summed it up for me. There's a guy right now doing life in prison, stealing a $5 pair of tennis shoes from the Dollar General store. He's been in jail for. He's been in jail for. Yes.
Oh my.
Yes.
Oh. Wow.
He's been in jail for 26 years and 10 months. We've spent close to $1 million housing this poor man. Okay, and that's when, and I knew it anyway, but when you hear a testimony like that, and that's when the light bulb really went off, and I said, and as we know, it's remember this, a $70 billion a year industry. The prison industrial complex, and here's a guy who's just, it's like taking herds of cattle and throwing them in a cage, and you're throwing away lives, and you know what happens too? Is you're tearing up communities, and also you're pissing those communities off. And that's why you're getting backlash now, too. Because people know today, and my point is this, is that it's a business. It has nothing to do with justice. It's a business.
We're all a commodity.
You just said, darling. And that's just it. They got a guy right now, another one, doing life in a penitentiary. $159 jacket. Life in prison.
$159 jacket, and he goes to prison for life.
Yeah, he's sitting in jail right now for arresting his natural.
Stolen. How is this possible with even what is placed for us in our civil liberties and protection, even with the United States Constitution, that we have done it's a minor crime.
You want to know when in my opinion, I've done a lot of research on this. If you really want to know when I think the ruination of policing started, it was September 13th, 1994, the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, which was originated, at the time by Senator Joe Biden of Delaware, our former vice president, as a social experiment. The man who sponsored the bill was a man by the name of Jack Brooks. Congress passed it, turned around. President Bill Clinton signed it into law. They went ahead and they fueled the privatized prison industry. It took $7.9 billion and they started fueling all of these prisons. And then what they did is they actually cut back on Pell Grants in order for inmates, let's say, to get a skill or a trade. And now it's become where they want you to have a high recidivism rate where you go back. Because in the privatized prisons, this is what people don't understand either, is that you don't get a skill. You don't get a trade. You do in the state prisons, but not in the privatized prisons. So, I mean, if anything, we've spent on the war on drugs since 1971, and now we have the privatized prison industry. We've spent, since 1971, easily $2 to $3 trillion. And where's it gotten us? Nowhere.
That's not a violent crime. Tennis shoes, a jacket, they look at that as a violent crime. Did these people have a weapon on them? Or did they just take it? And how did they justify this as being a violent crime?
They've got over 3,800 non-violent offenders right now doing life in prison. These were non-violent offenders there was a guy, and I can't think, it was here in Louisiana, and I apologize, I can't remember the parish, but there was a guy who was homeless who facilitated a $20 cannabis deal, went ahead, undercovers popped him. He's doing life right now because he was trying to get something to eat because he was hungry. He got popped with a $20 bag of weed, cannabis. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And how long did he get?
He's doing life.
Wow. Well,
oh, yeah.
How are they going to legalize cannabis when it's a bank account for the state?
That's exactly what it is. It's exactly, but you know, the thing that gets me, but it all goes back to education, is that, you know what, either you're going to pay for these kids on the front end, or you're going to pay for them, unfortunately, and it seems like they want to on the back end. And here's another thing, too, that will blow your mind. And this is something that really, really needs to get out. I've been thinking about this.
Please speak on it, sir.
Is that, you know what, we're better together, but we're not one. And I'm going to tell you why. Please advise me, and this is a big business down here in the city of New Orleans. Please tell me why mother has to go and purchase burial insurance on her teenage child. Oh, yeah.
Wait. What kind of insurance? What kind of insurance?
Burial.
For a teenage child?
Yeah, because...
Is this mandated in the state?
No, ma'am, not at all. This is what I wanted to tell you, and this is the thing that kind of, clicked. I was thinking about it. So when I was on a department, I was riding around one of the housing development / project, and I was with my field training officer, and I saw a white guy walking around in the project, and I'm going, this is kind of, this doesn't look right. And he goes, oh, that's a life insurance man. I said, what? Oh, yeah, he was actually selling burial policies to the mothers inside the project. It's not mandatory, but it's commonplace for a lot of these mothers, because a lot of the kids that I would talk to often would say, if I live to be 18, I'm happy. If I live to be 25, I'm an old man. Is that saying?
Yeah, I'm speechless right now. I'm speechless because, every state is different. When you start hitting the South and the heartland, it's a different world. From Colorado, from Nevada, from California. It just doesn't seem possible that other states function this way with the citizens within that state. And I don't think heartbreaking gives it justice, because it's literally indescribable, the level of corruption. And people don't have rights because they're bargained off as chips to get the numbers in their prisons.
Yeah. Well, if anything, and that's just it. It's like I was telling somebody the other day. I said, why would you want to turn around and, change things around when you got an unlimited supply of dummies? And that tells me right there. So, we say that, we love our kids. Well, like you were saying, we're one in Colorado, we're one in California, we're not one down here in the Deep South. And
it's
that was something. What's that?
We're so divided with technology, with social media. It was a perfect plan to put it together to keep people divided.
Yep.
Number one, it was a plan. Not only that, when they started realizing Facebook can work and how powerful it is, we've got these big corporations that are buying, like organic grocery stores. We give it a slang whole paycheck, but it's Whole Foods. And don't get me wrong, I love going into Whole Foods and I love the food bar, but to know that it's bought by a big company like Amazon and we're losing a lot of our stores, and mom and pops are losing their storefronts, they're losing their income. What are they going to do to replace the jobs for all of these people? How are the people of Louisiana going to be allotted an education in order to be able to migrate out of there or start their own business? How are people going to learn what their rights are? Do they just want to keep people stupid?
Well, if anything, I hate to tell you this, but you're absolutely correct. If anything, and that was the one thing that I learned, it's like I tell a lot of people, Vanessa, I said, you know what? Katrina was the worst and unfortunately the best thing for me to relocate to another state to see how people should really live and how they should be treated and how the educational systems should be run. And when I turned around and I came back home, I got to be honest with you, I was flabbergasted. There were times there were tears rolling down because, I was still reeling through everything, which I still am at times. But, I come back home and I'm thinking to myself, you know what, they could have done so much more here. And I said, the people, as always, in the South get shortchanged, which we did. And here we are, I'll give you a prime example. Here we are, coming up on the 12-year anniversary, and I'm sure you've heard of Charity Hospital. It's more or less world-renowned because it was like one of the number one trauma centers in the country. It was. And so, if anything, public safety, health, education, mental health, all of that should always be key in any society. So I get back here, Charity Hospital. It took them 11 years and 7 months to find out who was going to get the contract to clean it out. And I'm thinking to myself, come on, 11 years and 7 months to find out who's going to go ahead and clean out Charity Hospital when they have people here who need, mental health treatment, who just need good care. Granted, I know they just recently went ahead and they built a huge hospital not too far from the original Charity Hospital. But, even though, what about those years prior? Something should not, it's just too damn slow. Colorado is fast, progressive. Here, it's like at a turtle's pace.
It's just, I'm speechless. It's like a whole nother world down there.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't even seem like it should be. It's just I'm flabbergasted. I'm sorry. It just doesn't seem right. It seems like I'm talking to you and you're telling me a story.
Yeah,
and
nightmare.
This is real life.
Yeah,
and people have lost. They don't have civil liberties. They don't have constitutional rights. They don't have the right to a judge and jury. They don't have the right to an attorney. They don't have the right to fight for their rights.
Nope.
It's stagnant.
Unfortunately,
it's mentally,
today,
emotionally, and legally stagnant. And the only thing that it is the money that goes in the system.
Mm-hmm. Well, but if anything, you know what, Vanessa? that was another thing too. I said the only way things will ever change in the South, throughout the Gulf South, and I'm saying this. But you see, like I was saying, I got a big, big eye-opener from going from here to a first-class state, the way people should be treated, and then coming back here, and I thought to myself, I said, you know what? Unless the elephant in the room is addressed, nothing will change, and that's race and class. That's a fact. And that's the type of education that I got from being out in the Midwest and then coming back home. It opened my eyes big time. But you see, you got to address and start talking about stuff before anything may change. But if you keep it hush-hush and you try to keep sweeping it under the rug, then it won't change, unfortunately. But I tell you, that to me, that's the number one thing that needs to be addressed amongst all the other things that we've already talked about.
I gotta have you back on the show. I want to just thank you for your time and sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience. Just thank you. Thank you for being on Hemp Tribe Media. I know we're going to be doing more. I've got more people coming in from your state that want to speak as well, too, because there's a lot going on right now.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Miss Vanessa, you know what? It was my pleasure. No, I thank you. I thank you. Because, I mean, if anything, no, seriously, I mean, if anything, and you know what? I mean, the way I was on a police department is the same way I carry myself now. Like yourself, I go by HIT, H-I-T, the acronym, honesty, integrity, truth, and if it takes a New Orleanian who had to relocate to another state to come back here.
For treatment.
Exactly.
To be able to get off of the prescription drugs, to feel better, to be able to be a part of community. People just can't say they're a part of community. They got to get out there and do the work.
No, I mean, you're right, but I mean, my point is this: honesty, integrity, truth, the way I carry myself, okay? 365 a year, boom, that's it. And I mean, if anything, you know what? And I appreciate you bringing me on the show and letting me talk about a lot of different topics, because these are things that need to be brought up, you know?
Well, I look forward to more people you bring to the table. I really do, and
Hemp Tribe Media welcomes all guests related to industrial hemp and medical marijuana companies focusing on medicine, THC, no THC, 420 real estate, environmental building materials using hemp, hemp textiles and fibers, or hemp nutrition, cannabis investments, and how to understand the carbon negative side of industrial hemp. This show is for you.
Have suggestions for Hemp Tribe Media for future guests and show topics? Please email us at thehemptribemedia@gmail.com.
Again, thehemptribemedia@gmail.com.
Contour presents Terrible Impersonations. Yo, Adrian!
So fluffy!
Say hello to my little friend. With Contour's voice remote, you don't have to be good. You just have to say it and your TV finds it.
Hey, son of a nutcracker!
Voice remote on Contour from Cox. Cable TV reimagined to get you right to the good stuff. Available to residential customers in Cox service areas. Broadband Wi-Fi connection required for app-based viewing. Not all famous movie quotes are searchable. Other conditions apply.
With free next-day delivery from Staples, you can run your business like a pro. You can guarantee the marketing department that they'll get their supplies tomorrow, and guarantee the accounting department that they'll be delivered free. With free next-day delivery, you'll have the ability to move deadlines up and adjust budgets down. Go to Staples.com and get the office essentials you need delivered next day for free. Staples. It's pro time. Orders over $49.99. Placed by 5 p.m. Excludes weekends and holidays. Eligible items only.